We should be live now, but I'm still checking on whether we are streaming on both platforms because we're streaming today on both LinkedIn and YouTube. So just a couple more seconds just to check it, okay? Yeah, so we're here. Should be good. And yeah, and it seems like that everything is fine, so we can begin. So today we have our next webinars, our next practical webinars related to privacy law, to the protection of personal data. I want to remind you that I'm holding these practical webinars for business owners, for website developers, maybe for the developers of some mobile apps, so everyone who actually has their connection to the personal data of users, of customers, or maybe someone just thinking about has just an idea of developing something new, right? And they want to get some insights on the personal data protection. So for all of these people, it will be super helpful and useful to know more about personal data. So my name is Jen, and I'm I'm actually the privacy practitioner, and I also practicing DPO, like data protection officer. So I help companies to stay compliant. I help them actually reach this privacy compliance. I also help companies that just actually starting their business or just starting or thinking about launching some new products. I help them to build the strategies, to build the action plan, what they need to do step by step in order to actually to be compliant and in order to to comply with all privacy laws that apply to them. And it's logically that our today's topic, it will be super practical because it will be built and it will be concentrated on actually their privacy laws, which you will need to check, which you will need to figure out which privacy laws apply to your business specifically, because this is the most important part. When we have plenty of different laws available and we have more than 170 privacy laws effective currently worldwide. Moreover, some countries has more than one privacy laws, so they relate to different aspects of personal data. They might relate to different actually activities that are having that having connection with the personal data processing. And for sure, it's difficult, it's challenging for business owners to be aware of what is the scope of personal data protection law that you shall be aware of, that you actually need to follow, that you will need to comply with. And all these questions is absolutely normal and they are absolutely clear and straightforward, right? But it's not always so straightforward when you just start, when you just need to define this list of privacy laws that will apply to your business. So this is our topic today, and we will concentrate on it. On the last webinar, we actually talked about the personal data. We talked about the concept of the definition of personal data, what actually it means, what categories we have, how you need to figure out how you need to treat different types of personal data, because not all personal data has the same nature. Some personal data needs to be treated more seriously, such data as special categories of data, sensitive data like health information, like biometric information, also some maybe financial information, depending on the law for sure, because as you might remember, different privacy laws, they do have different scope of applicability, they do have different definitions of personal data. Some laws have more broad definition, and they can just they do not provide any specific list of actually examples of personal data that are protected under this law, while the other laws, they do have just definition a really broad one, and meaning that any type of personal data can relate to this and can be subject to this law. So this was our topic in the previous webinar, and today is our logical continuing of this. We talk about how actually you as a business owner or as like a website developer can define this list, this scope of privacy laws that you need to comply with, that you need to be aware of, and that you need to actually to follow. So today we will concentrate on the different aspects, on different criteria of how you actually can define this privacy laws, how you can actually understand which privacy laws you will need for sure to take aware, that you will need to take into consideration, right? And we also talk about some examples on specific laws, the most well-known. We'll talk about it a bit later. And I also want to stop just for a little while on some misconceptions that are present today, that some business owners make still mistakes like thinking in this way, and I want to debunk some myths about this. So this is our plan for today, and I want to start for sure with this first and most obvious question, like where do I start as a business owner? So I know, so I have a website, or maybe I have some product, or maybe I have some an idea. So where do I start? So there is a lot of privacy laws. So how do I need to, where shall I check first, right? So what do I need to do first? And for sure, the first actually filter, the first question is, where are your customers located? Or like, where is your audience? You need to clearly understand what is the geography of your users, of your clients, of your customers, because this is the first and this is the most important question. So privacy laws, like almost all privacy laws, they are related to your actually to the geography of your users, right? So the location, basically where they are located. So it doesn't mean whether your company is based in this region or not. And it doesn't mean whether you actually have like physical office in this location. Where are your users located? Yeah, you might even don't have anything there. You might don't even have any presence like physically in this specific area, but you still collect some personal data of users in this region. So this is your first mark. This is the first indicator. So now we're starting to narrowing down our scope of privacy laws that potentially could apply to your business. So let's say you're based in California, right? Like the most obvious one. A lot of business owners like frustrated when they hear Californian laws, but it's not so challenging, and it's not always the problem as a lot of companies might think. So let's say you're based in California. So for sure, the first guess that you might have is, okay, I will need to check California laws. And in most cases, yeah, for sure you will need to do this, right? Because if you're company based in California and if you have a digital online business, probably you will have like your percentage of users from California will be the biggest one, right? Because you are presenting them and you are probably offering the services, or maybe you're offering some goods for your clients, right? For your consumers. And for sure you have Californian residents there. So now we know for sure that Californian laws will probably apply to you. Our next question will be for sure, we need to narrow down the scope of Californian laws that might potentially apply to your business. And it's not only about their geography of users, that's all also about your about your scope of personal data you are collecting, right? It's about like your types of data you are actually having relation to. So because as I've told you previously, not all data are treated in the same manner. We have different categories of data, we have sensitive data, and in some cases, we have other laws presented that regulate these particular types of data. For example, if we think about children data, we have a separate federal law that regulates this information, right? That applies to this category of data. If we think about health data or biometric information, we also have a separate federal law that will apply to this. And in this case, you don't need to think only about your users. You also need to think about the categories of data you're actually working with, you're processing, right? So this is like one of the two filters that you just need to be aware of to be able to collect, to define the scope, this list of privacy laws that will apply to your business. Now we need to further to narrow down further this list of privacy laws that would apply to your business, and we need to think about two threshold criteria, as I call them. And we have, in most cases, we have just two criteria. It's territorial criteria and this is material. So now we will compare them and I will explain more clearly what each of them mean and how do you actually apply them and how they are actually defined in most privacy laws, right? So when we talk about territorial criteria, it's pretty obvious. Territorial criteria meaning the geography or location of your users, right? So if you have some user base in California, or maybe you have your users presented in all 50 states of the United States, for sure you will need to dig deeper into these laws. You need to check whether potentially these laws may apply to you and to check all 50 states. Currently, we have only 20 active states adopted in the United States, meaning that we don't have 50 states in all of them, right? But it's pretty a lot. And if you take your user base placed based in all these 20 states, for sure, it will be first indicator that we will need to check to see your user breakdown in every of this state. If you have a global business, like when we talk about digital business, in most cases it's presented globally, right? It has you may have audience, you may have users from around the world. You may have not only United States audience, you may have Canadian, you may also have Australian, you may have European Union, a lot of one, right? And that's for sure, it's a bit more complicated than just looking for United States laws. But that's also not a problem. We'll just think about a bit later about this issue. So territorial aspect, this is pretty clear, right? So just geography of your users. But the second aspect, the second criteria, it's material one. So what is this about? This is actually about the nature of the processing activities that you are engaged in. So when you think about the nature and to think about the concept of processing, we need to understand that the processing concept, it's a really broad definition. It's a really broad concept. You can, processing meaning having any connection, having any relation to the data, and meaning how you actually going to use this data, right? So you can just collect this data and store them. You can, for example, collect this data from users from the website and transfer this data to some third parties, right? To some vendors, maybe to some partners, or maybe even to other countries. So you will share this data not only within the United States or within one region. You may share this data around the world. You may share it with the partners that are based in other countries, in third-party regions, right? You may also have, you may also actually disclose this data to some particular categories of partners, right? You may just retain and keep this data. So there is plenty of different processing activities. What we are particularly interested in terms of material criteria which help us to define the scope of privacy laws, we are interested in sharing and selling practices. This is one of the most important in terms of protection of personal data, and if you're engaged in any of this type of processing, either sharing or selling, it for sure will indicate that you will probably need to comply with most part of United States laws, and for sure with the other one, you will also need to check this criteria. We actually need to check the applicability criteria of other laws as well. So when we talk about sharing or selling data, with the selling data, it's pretty obvious. When you collect some data and you not just use this data for your business operations, for example, you are selling some goods, right? You are selling, let's say, I don't know, accessories, and the main purpose of this business for sure is to use these contact details of your person, of the customers, maybe additional shipping details, or let's say home address to ship these goods, right? So the main purpose is to provide these goods to the person, to provide the services to the person. This is your main business operation purpose. But if you're, besides just actually using this data for your business main operation, maybe you are also selling this data, like you are actually getting money for selling this data to third parties. For sure, this is a separate type of processing, and this is a risky one, right? So because no one expect that you are going to sell this data, right? So I mean, users are not expecting that you will use this data in such manner. So this is a separate and risky area of operation. And if you do this, in most cases, like data brokers, this is a separate business activity that they are engaged in. What they just sell this data to different partners, and then this legal entities, these companies could use this data to target, for example, you with different with different services, goods they provide in different ads, right? And they offer some services, and you then guess how did they get this data, right? So this is getting from this is one of their type of activity that data brokers can be engaged in. Or if you're sharing data, another concept of this material aspect. If you share, again, when we share, it's a really broad concept. When we share, you can share it in any manner, right? Sharing meaning not only just sharing with some partners to, for example, to provide services to your customers. Sharing mean also when you're engaged in some advertising activities and you are engaged in some advertising networks like Meta or let's say TikTok, maybe Microsoft, being a lot of different platforms. And you're actually, when you're engaged in these activities and you want to target your users with your advertising, sometimes business owners are not even aware about this, but you actually share this data with these advertising networks, and they can, in the future, they can use this data, the collected data about users for cross-targeting behavior, right? So they continue to target users with different advertising that is related to the interest of this person or maybe even unrelated, right? Sometimes. So they actually collecting a lot of information that known as behavioral data. They build in the profile of users, right? They need to understand what is this user. And then they are able to offer this personalized advertisement to users. So this is two types of actually processing activities that you need to check. If you're engaged in any of this, you will need to check and you will need to accurately define whether the United States privacy laws will apply to you, because this is the main one, right? And let's just talk really quick let's actually explain this material criteria and territorial on the example of Californian law, right? So the most well-known in the United States law, the first one that was actually adopted in the United States is CCPA, right? It's California Consumer Protection Act. And for sure we have both criteria presented in this law. We have geographical point here, meaning territorial aspect. So this law applies specifically to California residents, and it relates only to Californian users. If you don't have any Californian users at all, by default, this law will not apply to you, right? So you don't need to care about this. But the second aspect, material one, it's a bit more complicated. So the applicability criteria of Californian law state that you have 3 points that you need to check on to say for sure whether you are a subject of this law or not. So let's say the first criteria, you have defined that, yeah, you have California residence. Your next step is to check whether you are actually subject of any of these 3 criteria presented in this laws. And the first point here is that you don't need to actually be subject of all of 3, right? You need to be subject at least 1. So the first one, if you have your gross revenue, if your gross revenue actually exceeds $26.6 million for the previous year, you by default you will be subject of this law and you will need to comply, irrespective of your privacy operations, irrespective of the scope of personal data you're collecting. By default, it doesn't mean, right? So you will need to comply with this. And make a note here that we are talking not about net income, we are talking about your gross revenue here. Second point is about the scope, the data volume of personal data that you are sharing or you are processing in any way, right? Specifically, we'll talk about sharing here. So if you have over 1,000 users of Californian users and you share this data somehow, meaning for example, for cross context behavioral with advertising networks, right? As an example, you also will need to comply with CCPA. You will be a subject of this law. But we also have the third one, and the third one specifically relates to the privacy, to the actual business operation that we talked earlier about. It relates to your what actually you are going to do with this data, and if you're planning to sell this data and you are generating some revenue from this particular practice, like not from any other one, not from just selling your goods, but from selling from selling personal data of users, you will definitely need to be a subject of this law. But we have here an important clarification that at least 50% of your revenue need to be generated from selling data. If less, CCPA will not apply to you. If actually 50 and more, it will apply. So meaning that when we talk about your revenue and when we see this threshold, it for sure indicates that the main business operations of the company that sells this data is like selling them, right? So when we talk about data brokers activities that actively engaged in selling, in offering databases for purchase to other companies, it's sure that they are engaged in this activity, right? So it's pretty obvious. When you actually explore this criteria, when you've checked this, you understand whether you're a subject of this law or not. The same with other United States privacy laws. We have 20 active state privacy laws, but they do have the same criteria. They do have material criteria, they do have geographical criteria. These thresholds, they differ for sure. They depend on the state, they depend on their privacy laws. So to be sure what actually you need to do, which laws you need to comply with, you need to check each of these laws, you need to check the criteria of each of them. Some of them have less data volume criteria, so not 1,000, like 35,000. Some of them will apply irrespective of their percentage of revenue generated from selling the data, right? So some of them has like even more serious criteria, like taxes, for example, taxes privacy laws. So they will not apply to small and medium businesses because you will not generate like millions of dollars, right? So it depends, and you need to be aware of this criteria, and you need to be sure that you have actually this audience, and then you can like can try to narrow down the scope of laws, right? Because you will be sure whether you need to check this or not. I also want to stop just for a little while also on the other misconcept that some business owners tend to think that if they are not present in the European Union, they probably will not need to apply. They will not need to comply with GDPR, with European data privacy laws. So this is really widespread thought that if you haven't got an establishment, if you haven't got an office like present in the European Union, you don't have any registered operation there, you don't have registered office there, meaning that you don't need to comply with GDPR. But this is not the issue. The main issue when we talk about European law, about GDPR, is that it has extraterritorial principle, meaning that it doesn't matter whether you are established there, whether you perform any actually operations physically there. It doesn't matter whether you have office or you have any manufacturer there. If you have in any way connection to users' data, to the European users' data, European residents of any of member states from the European Union, you will definitely be the subject of GDPR and other European laws as well, because GDPR is just like European Constitution of Personal Data Protection. But for sure, we do also have other European Union laws that do also relate to personal data protection, especially when we talk about cookies or other tracking technologies. And if you're actually in any manner, maybe you're just selling or offering some goods to European Union users. Let's say you have a website, an e-commerce website, and you are selling worldwide. You have some type of, maybe you have even some services like, I don't know, let's say you're having some model that is based on subscription based, right? So you're just selling subscriptions, right? And you don't need to be present in every country, in every country of the world to be able to perform this business, correct? So you can do it worldwide, and that's why you're targeting and you are selling this services to European users as well. So definitely, even if your company is established in the United States, you definitely need to be aware and to be able to actually ensure that you comply with GDPR as well. So this is the main point. So you need to be really careful when you think about GDPR, about the checking the applicability. By default, if you're having any targeting activities related to European users, so maybe you have a website and you have set your advertising settings in such ways that you will target not only United States residents, but you're also targeting European Union. For sure, you can target other areas as well, but right now we just talk about like one of their about the most serious, the most advanced privacy laws, because in most cases, the privacy laws of other countries they copy, they mimic in some way, in somehow GDPR and CCPA, right? And they will not be. I mean, this law are the strictest ones, so that's why we are paying attention to them first of all. Some other before we wrap up, I want also to concentrate just for some other misconcept that presenting, right, around business owners, around web developers. So we know for sure that right now we know for sure that we have this aspect, this territorial and material aspect that we need to check on. But sometimes business thinks that if we are engaged in B2B industry, like meaning that we are offering the services not to users, not to individuals, but to businesses, like to companies, right? Meaning that we do not need to comply or we are not subject to privacy laws at all. But this is not true, because why don't you even have a website, right? And it describes your product, your services that you're offering to even to business. It for sure have some kind of forms, website forms, or you passively collecting information from users visiting your website, like through cookies or other tracking technologies. And when is this person or individual browsing your website and it wants to, for example, to contact you, and this person wants to get some information about your services, even if this person is a representative of the company, right? Even from the legal entity, it's still this person still filling your form. It shares his or her personal information, like name, like email address. Even if this email address connected to the company of the where person is working, you can still identify this person with this information, right? So if this is a misconcept, and you need to be really careful when you think in this way, for sure you will need to perform privacy audit to be sure that you do not collect any personal data. But as I already mentioned, even if you have a website, and for sure this website will actually have some tools, will have some analytics tools, or maybe even advertising pixels presented and in such way, and for sure you will be collecting even passively some personal data from individuals who visited the website, and you need to be really careful about this one. And another misconcept, also really widespread, is meaning that some business think that if we are a local business and we offer some type of services only in this area, we don't need to think about other, actually, the laws like behind this area, right? So let's say you're a dentistry, or you have, beauty salon in some in some city, right? Some city of, let's say, Texas, right? And you by default you think that, okay, so I don't need to care about it. I don't need to care about other laws. So, and if I'm too small, I probably don't need to worry about the laws, privacy laws at all. But that's not true, especially if you're a dentistry, as I've mentioned, or you have some healthcare industry, even if you're at local, right? But you have actually relation to health data, to biometric information, maybe in some way. You are actively collecting sensitive data of these users, of your customers. And for sure, even if you are not subject of Texas privacy laws, the state privacy laws, you will probably be the subject of federal United States laws. So be really careful when you're when you're thinking about when you try to limit your scope of exposure, because sometimes when you think about your business presence, you don't think about your digital presence. So physical presence doesn't equal digital presence. Sometimes companies target, sometimes company perform set advertising in such manner that they will target users from around the United States, or maybe even around the world, right? So you need to be careful about it when you think about your audience. You need to check your settings of advertising. You need to see your analytics. You need to see your user breakdown. So this is one of the most important point that I want to clarify, that I want to pay attention to, is checking your user breakdown. So most of the websites nowadays have different analytics tools that help to see your audience, that help to see your user breakdown, how many users from what state, from what country you have, all these aspects that they will help you to know for sure what audience looks like, and what is actually the data, this volume scope that you're collecting in real time, right? In real life. So this is actually everything that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you will find this webinar, this practical guidance, this practical tips were really helpful, and you can actually apply them right away. So for sure you can do it after we have defined these points. So yeah, that's all. I will see you the next week as we continue talking about personal data protection, for sure, about the practical tips for business. And that's all. See you next week.